The sky has always been a question. A vast silence overhead, filled with stars too distant to touch, too ancient to fully comprehend. For centuries, we've looked up and wondered, are we alone? Are those pinpricks of light the cold, dead lanterns of an indifferent universe? Or are they the campfires of distant civilizations, waiting for us to notice? That timeless curiosity took a dramatic turn the moment the James Webb Space Telescope turned its gaze toward Proxima Centauri b. Just over 4 light-years from Earth, about 24 trillion miles, a number too immense to truly grasp, lies our closest neighboring star system, Proxima Centauri. Orbiting that small red dwarf is a planet called Proxima B, long believed to be one of our most promising candidates in the search for alien life. It's within the so-called Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, possibly just right for water, and with it, the potential for life. But until now, all we had were vague clues, atmospheric guesses, temperature models, hopeful speculation. What we didn't have was proof. And yet, somehow, against the odds, that may have just changed. It began as a routine observation. Scientists targeted Proxima B to update its spectrographic data, measurements of its atmosphere, hints of oxygen, methane, or water vapor. The James Webb Space Telescope, with its unmatched precision and sensitivity to infrared light, was the perfect instrument for the job. But as the data streamed back to Earth, something extraordinary began to emerge. Something that defied not just expectations, but belief. On the night side of Proxima B, the side turned away from its dim sun, there was light. Not a scattered aurora, not a diffuse glow like moonlight or volcanic emissions. This was something structured. The light pulsed in regular patterns. It brightened and dimmed as though following a schedule. It formed grids, clusters, roads. In short, it resembled something deeply familiar to every human being who has ever looked down at a city from an airplane window. What the James Webb Telescope had detected looked like artificial illumination, city lights. The first reaction was disbelief. It had to be a glitch, a data artifact, maybe cosmic interference or an error in calibration. But then the analysis deepened. The light patterns weren't random, they repeated. They behaved in ways that suggested an underlying rhythm, almost like the electrical hum of civilization itself. When the supposed evening began on that alien world, the lights would intensify. And as planetary night progressed, they would dim. Over time, across multiple observations and different orbital passes, the telescope confirmed it again and again. This wasn't natural. It wasn't noise. It was a signal. The configuration was eerily Earth-like, dense clusters of illumination with thinner bands connecting them, reminiscent of highways between metropolitan centers. It was as if someone had taken satellite photos of Earth at night and painted them onto another world. And the implications were staggering. If those lights were artificial and all evidence pointed to that conclusion, then someone built them. A civilization, an intelligence not just alive, but organized. Capable of manipulating energy, infrastructure, perhaps even aware of their place in the stars. It wasn't the ghost of a long-dead alien biosphere. It wasn't a tantalizing chemical whisper in the atmosphere. This was real. This was now. This was a city glowing in the dark, 4 light-years away. Suddenly, all the philosophical debates and scientific models, the probabilities of the Drake equation, the SETI dreams, the speculative fiction collided with the weight of actual, observable data. The idea that life might exist elsewhere in the universe went from maybe someday to look right there. We had always assumed that intelligent civilizations would be rare, hidden in the distant reaches of time and space, or separated from us by vast gulfs of technology or chance. But what if one of them was just next door? The human mind struggles with this kind of revelation, not just because of the scale, but because of the intimacy. We're used to thinking of ourselves as unique, alone in our capability to dream, to build, to reach. But those lights suggest we might not be alone at all. That, across the cold void, another people, however strange, have raised their own towers, wired their own grids, and perhaps even looked up at their own night sky, wondering who else might be out there. And just as we've spotted them, perhaps they've spotted us. It's not just the presence of lights that stirs the imagination. It's the implications buried within them. Energy usage, for one. Such illumination requires power, and power implies industry, infrastructure, and purpose. Could they be harnessing their version of renewable energy, or something far more advanced? Have they learned to tame their red dwarf's violent solar flares? What technologies do they wield that allow them to thrive under such conditions? Red dwarfs, after all, are notoriously unstable. They bombard their planets with radiation that could strip away atmospheres and sterilize entire surfaces. And yet, there's Proxima B, alive with light, defiant in its glow. If these beings found a way to endure such cosmic brutality, they are not only intelligent, they are resilient, possibly more so than we are. But beyond the science, beyond the marvel of engineering, there's something deeply human in our reaction to this. A mix of awe and fear, wonder and humility. What do those lights mean? Are they signs of a civilization celebrating its existence, or merely a practical necessity for survival? Could the patterns of their light be trying to say something to us? Messages encoded in geometry, or simple visibility meant to shout across the darkness, "We are here"? Or could they be unaware that anyone else is watching? It's a thought both sobering and thrilling. A mirror held up not just to a distant world, but to ourselves. In their lights, we see echoes of our own cities, our own attempts to carve brightness out of darkness. Maybe they too sit by windows at night, watching the stars, dreaming of others. Maybe they've wondered for generations whether they were the only ones. But as the first wave of wonder washed over the scientific community, it was quickly followed by a deeper, more unsettling realization. The lights on Proxima B weren't just beautiful. They were organized, too organized. Not random scatterings of light caused by wildfires or geological phenomena. Not the eerie shimmer of bioluminescent life. These lights form deliberate shapes. A structure. Some clustered densely. Others formed elongated trails stretching across what must be vast distances on the planet's surface, like arterial veins glowing beneath the skin of a living world. The more researchers analyzed the data, the more the illusion of coincidence unraveled. They mapped the illumination patterns and compared them against countless simulations of natural light behavior. But nothing fit. Volcanic eruptions, auroras, reflections, atmospheric distortion, every known cause of night-side brightness was systematically ruled out. What remained was a silent conclusion that no one wanted to say aloud. This light was made. It was artificial. What made this even more astonishing was the rhythm behind it. The pulse. On Earth, cities dim and brighten in predictable patterns based on time and human activity. Our energy usage follows the sun, peaks in the evenings, ebbs in the dead of night. The lights on Proxima B behaved in eerily similar ways, suggesting a cycle, perhaps even a concept of time. Maybe it wasn't a 24-hour rotation like Earth's, but there was something, a heartbeat, a signal, an alien clock ticking in tandem with another world's needs. And this is where the emotional magnitude truly began to swell. Because the moment we admit to ourselves that these lights are signs of a civilization, we're no longer looking at stars. We're looking at people. Not necessarily human, not in the way we know ourselves, but someone. Beings capable of surviving, thriving, and perhaps even dreaming under a sky that's 4 light years away from ours. Someone else is out there, not only alive, but busy, Building, powering, illuminating. That thought alone changes everything. Consider the implications. The detection of light patterns alone suggests an energy infrastructure, an entire ecosystem of control, planning, and technology. And where there's technology, there's science. Where there's science, there's communication. There's the tantalizing question: are they broadcasting something right now? Not a targeted message like, "We come in peace," but raw, ambient noise, leakage. The kind of radio emissions we ourselves have been sending out into the cosmos since the invention of the antenna. Could their signals be washing over Earth this very moment, buried in the static, waiting to be decoded? Or worse, have they already heard us? The lights on Proxima B may not just signal life. They may signal a presence that knows it is not alone. A presence that may have eyes, ears, instruments pointed in our direction, just as we've aimed ours at them. This isn't some dusty fossil buried in Martian rock. It's not a mysterious blip in a radio signal. This is architecture, activity, real-time existence. It makes the Drake equation, the famous formula estimating how many intelligent civilizations might exist in our galaxy, feel suddenly inadequate. One of its most speculative variables, the fraction of planets that develop intelligent life, may now have a confirmed value greater than 0. For decades, the equation's outputs were only guesswork. But now, we have a data point, a glowing, flickering, city-sized data point. That realization settles over the human imagination like a heavy fog. Because if one civilization exists so close, what does that say about the rest of the galaxy? Could the universe be teeming with life, not in forms we can't recognize, but in those astonishingly parallel to our own? What if cities, lights, and technology are not uniquely human expressions, but inevitable outcomes of intelligence itself? And then another, darker thought arises. If they are advanced enough to light up a planet, what else might they be capable of? Do they travel? Are they explorers like us, reaching out into the unknown? Do they have crafts, orbiting other worlds in their system, or even beyond it? Could they have already developed the means of interstellar travel, making our slow, stumbling probes look like child's toys? Are they peaceful? Curious? Or have they had wars, collapses, revivals? Do they fear, like us, that the universe may not be friendly? And if their telescopes, if they have such things, are aimed at Earth, what do they see? Do our cities glow as unmistakably to them as theirs do to us? Has someone across the void stared at those golden lines stretching across continents and wondered the same things we are now? Are they sending messages, not because they expect a reply, but because they know someone out there might just be listening? It's a question that stirs the very core of what it means to be human. For the first time, perhaps ever, we are confronting not just the idea of alien life, but of alien presence. A civilization so real, it leaves fingerprints on the surface of a world we can barely comprehend. A people that have already made their mark on the universe, and in doing so, have marked us too. And as these thoughts spread across scientific circles and online forums, the world itself begins to shift. There is fear, yes, fear of the unknown, of what it means to no longer be the only voice in the dark. But there is also wonder, profound, breathtaking wonder. Because now, the night sky is no longer a silent dome. It is a map of stories, stories that may already be unfolding on other planets, in other tongues, under other stars. And Proxima B, that faint dot once dismissed as just another rocky orb, now pulses with possibility. Every pixel of light captured by JWST's incredible sensors becomes a page in a new chapter of human history, not just because of what it reveals about them, but because of what it reveals about us. Because maybe, just maybe, we are not the first. Maybe we are not the greatest, but we are part of something far bigger than ourselves. And in those glowing patches of light, those hauntingly familiar cityscapes flickering in the endless dark. We are witnessing a reflection, a whisper, a beacon. The question is no longer whether someone is out there. And now we arrive at the edge of something deeper, something that doesn't just spark imagination or rewrite equations, but shifts our very identity as a species. Because those lights, faint but unmistakable, spread across a world we've never touched, aren't just about discovery. They're about connection. They're about the terrifying, exhilarating moment when a solitary voice in the dark finally hears another whisper back. For centuries, humanity has looked at the stars and painted myths across their canvas. Gods, monsters, dreams. Every culture that ever lived has built stories around the stars. And yet none of them ever truly answered the question that haunted us the most. Are we alone? Now, with the James Webb Space Telescope's data in hand, the universe might finally be starting to reply. Not with words, not even with signals, but with light. Structured, deliberate, impossible to ignore. A quiet declaration. We are here too. Scientists now face a profound responsibility. The validation process for these findings is still underway, of course. Peer review, independent verification, further observations. But already the implications are cascading through every corner of thought. Cosmologists, biologists, theologians, philosophers, everyone is suddenly drawn into the same vortex. Because no matter who you are, the truth has weight. There are lights on another planet, and they are not random. Some researchers are already exploring whether the patterns themselves might encode something deeper, possibly even a message. It's a tantalizing idea, and one grounded in precedent. After all, humanity has sent its own messages into space before. The Arecibo signal, the Pioneer plaque, the Voyager golden record. We have always assumed that if we found someone out there, we'd want to talk to them. But what if they've already sent their version of that message? What if the shape and rhythm of those lights aren't merely the byproduct of civilization, but its first word? A word spoken in photons, in patterns, in pulses. But this encounter, if that's what it is, raises more than just technical questions. It raises emotional ones, existential ones. If we're no longer alone, what does that mean for how we live? How we treat one another? How we imagine our place in the cosmos? Already, voices have begun to rise, calling for caution. We don't know what's out there, they say. Maybe we should stay silent. The argument echoes the logic of the so-called dark forest theory, that the universe is quiet not because it's empty, but because everyone is hiding, because exposure could be dangerous, fatal even. But perhaps the lights themselves are an answer to that fear, a rebuttal. Maybe this other civilization isn't hiding. Maybe they've lived with the same questions and doubts and chose instead to step into the open, not with warships or invasions, but with simple evidence of life, with cities, with home. There's something indescribably moving about that. Because if we strip away the distance, the language, the biology, if we reduce everything down to its purest form, what we're seeing isn't alien. It's familiar. It's the universal desire to shape the world around us, to make it brighter, safer, warmer, to fight the night not with fear, but with light. And that, more than anything, is what stirs the heart. It's not just about science, it's not even just about proof. It's about the human soul, suddenly realizing that its yearning for companionship, for meaning, for shared experience, might not be in vain. That maybe, just maybe, across that silent abyss, someone else has felt it too. Consider the children who will grow up in a world where this is accepted fact. A world where Earth is not the singular cradle of life, but one of many sparks in the darkness. For them, space won't be just a frontier. It'll be a community, a possibility, a place not of exile or danger, but of neighbors. We are witnessing the first glimmer of that future right now. And there's more. If the lights suggest technology, then we must ask, what else is possible for these beings? Could they have reached space, sent probes? Could they have visited other planets, or even explored other stars? Could they, even now, be doing what we are, scanning the heavens, looking for us? And if so, have they found us? It's no longer absurd to ask, no longer science fiction. Because if we could detect them, it's only logical to assume they might detect us. Our planet, after all, has glowed with artificial light for more than a century. Our television broadcasts, our radio waves, our pulses of energy, all spilling outward at the speed of light. If they've been watching, what have they seen? Perhaps they saw our wars and our art, our destruction and our beauty. Perhaps they watched us walk on the moon, send our own spacecraft to the edges of the solar system, launch telescopes like Webb into the sky to see further, deeper, clearer. Perhaps in those patterns they saw a kindred struggle, a shared ascent. Or perhaps they only saw the light, and in that light they knew enough. But regardless of what they've seen, or what we've seen of them, the moment we are in now will echo for generations. The lights on Proxima B are more than a detection. They are a shift in perspective, a turning point. We can no longer pretend the universe is silent. We can no longer gaze into the night sky and think only of ourselves. Because now, we know there is another light shining back. And it humbles us, because while we've dreamed of meeting someone else among the stars, we never really thought we'd recognize them. Not yet. Not like this. And yet, somehow, through the veil of darkness, through the cold, through the infinite stretch of space, we see it. The unmistakable flicker of civilization, of intent, of life. It may take years before we know for certain what those lights mean. We may never find the beings who created them. We may never understand their language, their culture, their science. But the light itself is undeniable. It has reached us, and in its glow, we see not just the face of another world, but the next chapter of our own. Because light, even across the vacuum of space, carries meaning. And the meaning is this: we are not alone, not anymore, not ever again.